Dr. Pepe Marias, you recommended The Heart of Business by Hubert Holy.
He ended up being asked to head up Best Buy, which was declining, and he stepped in and he turned this business around based on organizational purpose.
This maximizing shareholder value is incomplete.
One could assume that purpose contradicts money, and Hubert is going, no, there's a more noble purpose to your business, and money is a byproduct. And I don't think that negates the importance of money. Hubert's approach linked more into this idea of serving your people, serving your customers.
Welcome to the Non-Fiction Book Club. I'm your host, John Bradshaw, and we have a great show for you today. A reminder to sign up to our newsletter to be the first to hear about interviews, book reviews, and get great discounts on all the books we cover, courtesy of exclusive books. You can sign up at www.nonfictionbookclub.co.za. It is my great privilege to welcome Dr. Pepe Marias to the Non-Fiction Book Club. Pepe is an author of 3 great books, Growing Greatness, 20 Habits, and most recently, One Word, a book on purpose, which I know we'll get in today. He's also the co-founder of Joe Public, one of South Africa's top creative agencies, highly awarded. Himself, he has been recognized as a creative leader in South Africa, being inducted into the Marais Hall of Fame. He also recently completed his PhD in business management on the topic of purpose. He helps businesses and individuals understand their purpose and apply it to their lives. So just the perfect person to have for the book we have today. Welcome to the Non-Fiction Book Club, Pepe.
Thanks much, John.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here, and I must say thank you. I didn't know this book existed. I absolutely loved reading it at your recommendation. It is The Heart of Business by Hubert Holy. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about where you were in your journey when you first came across this book.
Where was I exactly? I was in the middle of my academic journey. So it must have been around 2022, 2023. And I was interrogating this failure to implement purpose into organizations. It was, the podcast of Hubert was recommended to me by a friend of mine, Louise van Rijn. She said, you got to watch this because...
From Partners for Possibility.
That's right. Yeah. It's a very good friend. And we've done some work together in the space as well. And when I watched the interview with Adrian Gore on LinkedIn, I instantly got the book. And it was just incredible because it substantiated my belief and my approach to business, which is difficult to sell because we're a small to medium enterprise.
Yeah.
And here comes a global recognized post his McKinsey journey CEO, prolific, turning around 120,000 people organization.
So, well, I think maybe a good place to start, because I'm pretty sure most of our listeners won't have come across this book. So maybe you could describe a little bit about what is this book the story of and what is its main emphasis?
Beautifully written. And I love books, business books, when the author is super authentic. And I try to be very authentic in my writing as well. And he takes us through a journey from childhood. If I remember correctly, his first job was a bellboy at a hotel. And I went into the traditional journey, McKinsey's, so very much by the book.
Yeah.
Because that's what we do. We get taught the Milton Friedman way. And then from there, he had quite a turning point in his 40s where he started questioning the meaning of life. You know, he started making money, make a lot of money, and you might still not be happy. And he changed his approach. And in that process, he ended up eventually being asked to head up, after having quite a few jobs as chief executive, to head up Best Buy, which was declining in terms of their market, or even I think their share price was just dropping, falling apart, massive retailer. Probably similar to what we see with the Pick n Pay story, you know, like a prolific brand that's going in decline, and he stepped in and how he turned this business around based on organizational purpose. Yeah. And then I just went like, he's speaking my language.
Yeah, and it's incredible because it's a big electronics retailer, Best Buy. It's got structural problems, but really he comes in and goes at the heart of it. And you mentioned Milton Friedman. One of the big revelations he has
Yeah.
is that this idea of maximizing shareholder value is wrong, but that there's more to it. I absolutely love that, because I remember a story where Milton Friedman visited South Africa, and he was at a event with Raymond Ackerman, and Raymond Ackerman was talking about the purpose of Pick n Pay is to serve customers, and Milton Friedman got up and said, "You're stealing from your shareholders. The purpose of the business is to maximize shareholder value." And Raymond Ackerman stood his ground and fought back with him. And years later, Milton Friedman, Nobel Prize winner, sent him an apology and says, "Actually, you were right." So it really feels like this maximizing shareholder value is incomplete. So how does Hubert Holy apply that to then some of the Best Buy? What is it if it's not shareholder value?
So that is, I always wonder if we're starting to question that as the purpose of business, how do we get more people to buy into it? But he obviously must have had, and I'm assuming this, a deep internal change first. He must have come to internal realization in his life that money is not the be all and end all. It makes the world go round, but it does not buy you happiness.
Yeah.
You know? So I think he must have had an internal shift. But what he did bring into Best Buy was the human element, like putting people at the heart. And also I love that he said the heart of the business, saying at the heart of the business does not exist to make money, which totally contradicts Friedman's belief, Milton's approach. And I think it's that people's centricity that he brought into Best Buy. And also turning because purpose often sounds so CSI-like.
Yes.
And it's not. It's just that you go more into service. So if Raymond Ackerman said to serve, he's already serving. He's not taking. And I find the capitalist, I'm a capitalist, but I like to be a conscious capitalist. But I find Hubert's approach linked more into this idea of serving your people, serving your customers. And if you do that well with a great product, and make it a human experience. There's a beautiful story in there that comes up for me now where a kid's toy broke and he brought it back in. And instead of just a cold exchange of toys, they pretended that they did a transplant and behind the counter swapped the toy and gave him the fixed toy
with
back.
a little bit of a plaster on it. Yes, amazing.
So that human element is what I believe, similar to him, is what's lacking in businesses.
Yeah.
And beautiful, beautiful business book to read.
And it's so amazing because he comes in and everyone's expecting him to apply the playbook to cut jobs. And he doesn't. He says, well, we're going to be a sales-led. Most of our challenges are self-inflicted, right? And really, you mentioned that he unlocks this human magic.
Yeah.
And I wrote down the 5 parts of human magic because I just thought it was so good. Is connecting dreams, connecting the purpose of the business to the individual purpose, developing connections, so making sure that autonomy, mastery, and growth. Right? I just think that's such a brilliant collection that he's doing. And he says, if you're here to just earn a salary, that's fine. There are other places you can do here, but you're not going to work here. Right? You need to buy into this human magic.
That first one that you mentioned in that order, that is the most critical one, because he also mentions the statistic around engagement of employees. The global statistic is 84 out of 100 people are not engaged in the businesses where they get paid a salary to be at most of their awakened lives. And I think, I'll paraphrase, but he mentions it's like a crime against human potential.
Yeah.
Because only 16 in 100. So that first point of connecting the purpose of the organization to the purpose of the individual is such a critical point.
I think it's so good. I think it was Barry Schwartz who said that we have this broken idea that people only work for money. Therefore, we need to provide incentives. Therefore, we create workplaces that only motivate with money, and then we're surprised that people are only working for money in these workplaces that we've created.
So we've been conditioned.
So I think that I mean, one of the interesting ways he describes his role as a leader is as a gardener. Like, did that as someone who's built a business, did that resonate?
Totally,
with
totally.
you? How as a leader, like a gardener?
That's what I'm saying. Like, even when I look back now, I remember, because I read this 4 years ago, but I remember at the time a lot of, because his book uses quite a bit of research in it. There's a lot of, and I realized, geez, he's using a lot of the research that I was researching at the time with my thesis. So it was just such a beautiful, like, connection in terms of finding another human being that's thinking in a similar way and being a very prolific
And doing it at scale and succeeding.
and succeeding. But why that resonated with me is our purpose word in our business is growth. And we've tweaked the statement over the years as I got to understand the methodology, the approach, the belief actually better. And ours used to be the fertile soil that serves the growth.
Okay.
So the fertile of the soil, and then him speaking to that because that's what you are as a leader. If you're a really good leader, you're just there watering more plants.
You provide the context for growth.
And the nourishment and the soil. And if you do that right, the people actually bring their potential to life. Very difficult to get right. I mean, so what he did is quite profound. But yeah, I love that metaphor.
Well, there are two things I love about your description of the fertile soil. The one, and the gardener, the one is that the plant is the hero, right? Nobody ever praises the soil. Maybe farmers praise the soil, but actually you see the beautiful flower.
Yeah.
But it's the context that's made that possible. I also think gardening isn't perfect. Like, actually what gardening is, you don't set your garden up and then you're done. You're constantly walking around and say, that needs more water, that needs pruning, that needs trimming. And for me, that really resonates with me as what it feels like when you're trying to build a good culture. You're like, give a bit of energy to that, provide a bit of discipline or boundary to that. So it feels like such a rich metaphor.
It's a beautiful metaphor. It's interesting because we see the conversations often where it goes like, business is not like family. It can't be like family because you'll never cut a family member out of your family because of the reality of business and the ebb and the flow. But again, that's why I also like the gardening metaphor, because it does give a little bit of comfort that you have to prune at times to stimulate new growth, But yeah, to live it though, you also don't scream at plants or expect them to grow faster than their nature,
right?
But to live that for me personally is still my work that I have to do. So that's why I love the model of being, consciously incompetent.
Yes.
So
that's
still screaming at the plant, but as you scream at it, you kind of go, I can go to myself and go, okay, that's not the right way of getting my plant to grow.
Yeah. And there's something that's almost implicit in this, in that there's a real care for his people. Yes, he cares about the result, but it's not a false care. I remember sitting on the bus at a conference next to this crazy guy called Paulo Pereira da Silva. He was the CEO of Renova, the world's sexiest toilet paper company. I mean, you could Google it. It's crazy. And he was like, John, it's easy to be a leader. All you have to do is love your team. Right? And that was such a challenge. I mean, this is a really practical book, but at the heart of it, it's impossible to do if you don't have that genuine care and affection for the people. It'll just come across as fake.
That's why, just thinking back, I can't remember him sharing much about his personal inner change. I don't know if you've read it recently.
But
he must have shifted.
There must have been
an inner thing that happened there.
Yeah.
Because where he came from and what he became are two different sets of leaders. So he must have had an inner shift first. But that is always the challenge, is to apply these learnings that make so much sense when you read them, but to live it and to implement it.
Yeah. You have to change who you are, not just what you do.
No. And that's where we make the mistake. We want to do the work on the business, and we want the business to succeed or the business to be purposeful, but we don't want to do the work on ourselves.
Yeah.
That's why I love, if I ever had the opportunity to meet him, I will definitely ask him what is the backstory to this story.
Yeah.
Because there's a human, and he does share a lot of he's pretty vulnerable in it.
Yeah.
But I think he's holding back some serious stuff that happened behind the scenes.
Yeah. This idea, he uses the phrase noble purpose. Right? I really love it. The key to succeeding at Best Buy was this defining and operationalizing this noble purpose. So someone who's now, both then and since then, done a lot of research, how do you think of this noble purpose, and how does it play a role that's so fundamental in turning around a business?
So I've stolen that phrase. I loved it as well.
Brilliant phrase.
Like the noble. So I don't, and this is a big thing, because one could assume that purpose contradicts money. So if Milton Friedman was all about the purpose of business to make money for its shareholders, so that's the purpose, and Hubert is going, no, there's a more noble purpose to your business, and money is a byproduct. And I don't think that negates the importance of money. So I've also learned now through my studies that money is extremely noble. In the wrong hands, it's the root of all evil. In the right hands, it's the root of all good. So we make all these assumptions. It's just a piece of paper in essence. It's digitized now, but in essence. What he speaks to about the nobility is the service aspect. Because if you're in business to make money, ultimately you are serving yourself first and foremost. And in my experience, it truly is true that the more you give, the more you receive, as long as you don't give to receive. So the system we operate in my view, is extremely sophisticated, the greater system which we can't even comprehend. But in my experience, when I naturally come from a place of giving, without wanting anything back. I mean, I literally was asked 2 weeks ago to speak to a small entrepreneurial concern, and I just didn't expect any money to do it. And when I finished, I put like a loaded cash thing in my hand. It felt like a drug deal. So I was like, but there's a prime example. I gave an hour of my time not willing to receive anything, and I just got given capital. So his nobility he speaks to is service.
I mean, for me, that feels so powerful. That is, and I guess we're at the stage of our life where you naturally start to look for meaning and be outward focused and looking for service. It feels to me like young people coming into our businesses have looked ahead and seen, well, I'm not going to do my time because I've seen how you guys fire 50-year-olds, right? So I'm going to make sure that at every stage of my career, I get what I'm worth, right? Like I'm fighting, I need to fight for myself because nobody else is going to fight for me. You have a business with a lot of young people coming into it. How do you imbue the sense of service in people that are being taught a narrative of you have to serve yourself because nobody else will serve you?
Slowly but surely. So I can state with my hand on my heart, we've been purpose-driven as an organization for 16 years. We are probably 5% of where we could be in terms of implementation. But then the power in it at being at 5% is look at what we've achieved within a very
even with
5%. 5%.
Yeah.
So what I've learned now is we're so complex as people, and we simplify people. We simplify it. We're not the experience in each person, the lived experience of their lives, we have no idea of. So 5% is actually massive. I think the best way to influence is through example. And of course, words. Words are powerful. Cognitively, you can get people to at least cognitively understand what a company stands for. And then through behavior consistently. So for instance, we know, and he said it too, safe space.
Yeah, the psychological safety.
Psychological safety. Now, that's something we don't have yet as a business. But we're a long way from where we were a decade ago. I mean, it's not like everyone's shaking in their boots. Quantum leaps away from where, but it's ongoing work. Yes. Growth is a never-ending journey, and I don't think you'll ever stand and go, I've done it.
Yeah, and you've got it's the trajectory of it as we go. Look, I think we're going to keep referring back to the heart of business, but I would love to use some of the time. You did your PhD on understanding purpose. You've then put the essence of it into this book, one word.
Yeah.
Why did this book have to be written? What was it in you that was driving you to put in that, as Simon Sinek calls it, the excruciating pain of working out what you really think?
I know. So the implementation failure.
Okay.
So my frustration with the failure to implement is what inspired, because my privilege is normally when you do academia, it ends up being academic. And it's just sort of hypothesis. I've got the amazing opportunity to implement it into, what is a proefkonijn? It's like a test case study
Okay.
of a 300 people organization.
Yes.
I can implement all my thinking. So the model that I built, the implementation framework, we are actively implementing it and seeing if there's a shift. And that was another amazing insight from Hubert's book, because at the time, so purpose is when correctly constructed, and that is what I found in my studies, they're often constructed consciously. So we try and fabricate them and make them up so they sound right, or they sound like, but they don't come from the heart. So that's why I love what he said, the heart of business, and I'm using that consciously now as well. And I'll give him credit. I've stolen from him that and the noble intention. So, but when you go into the unconsciousness of a business, when you dig deeper, when you think, if you take Sorbet as a company, and you could assume their one word would be beauty, if you try to consciously construct, but that's still what they do. Why do they do what they do?
Yeah. If you go into the why, I'm sure it'll be something like dignity or something like that.
Close.
Kind of
I haven't done it, but I'm assuming it could be confidence.
the noble purpose.
The noble
purpose will be something about.
When the human interact with a brand, they might feel crap about themselves because I was shouted and I'm going for pamper and someone speaks nicely to me, and when I leave I actually feel a bit more confident. So maybe they're in the business of confidence, which also from a marketing point of view is much more richer territory to connect with people. It's much more authentic, it's much more vulnerable, because beauty is skin deep.
Yeah.
Whereas Dove used beauty, but they put a spin of real on it.
Real beauty.
So I think on all levels, on an internal culture level, on an external brand marketing level, it's a much better approach. And he's come along and he's shown that it can work in a massive corporation.
Yeah.
So he brought in this they're thinking that there's a noble intention. I don't even think if he brought it in, but I picked up all of the purpose statements that he uses has a to and a through. It's got an intention and an action.
Yes. It has the how.
It's got the how.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of purpose statements lack, even Joe Public's one at the time.
Right.
And we brought in more focus on the how. I was very clear on what the how is internally.
But it just wasn't
Didn't put it on the wall.
articulated.
It wasn't articulated. And just with that clarity in 2 years, we've already seen like a...
So you think, we're talking about this frustration you had in seeing nobody implementing.
Yes.
Do you think that how is the key to implementation, or are there other aspects as well?
That's the second most important key to implementation, is the how. I call it, and now I'm kind of like it's overlapping. I don't know if it's him saying it or he's saying, who's saying it, but the how to me is the obsessive action.
Yes.
Because to change a world that is, and especially in a country that is more and more becoming mediocre in service level, in output level, in product level. We are at the moment creating a lazy society. So I think the obsession in your actions needs to be quite obsessive. And when it's driven by a noble intention, you tend to go deeper, you
go deep.
There's this
Especially
depth
if
that
your
pushes.
purpose is attached to that purpose.
That's the second thing. So that's the most important.
That's the most important.
That was the gap in the academic literature, because there are quite a lot of, McKinsey's got I think it's a 7P implementation framework for purpose, and I found 2 or 3 others, but none of them are working. And the missing ingredient is we all look at the business, we don't look at ourselves. So even when Hubert say, when you can connect the business purpose with the people's purpose, when you have a body of leaders who are not clear on their own personal purposes and living it, you can't implement purpose into the business. So if you have a board of 10 and you employ 1,000 people and one person has his or her purpose, other 9 not, you will only implement 10% at max. So the first job is for the leaders to become more conscious of why they're in the business.
It's incredible. I remember when he's getting interviewed for the CEO job, one of the board members asks, "Tell me about your soul." and he's surprised by that question. They then go through this huge process of bringing together top leaders and everyone telling their life story, and then unlocking the individual purpose from those life stories.
I actually get goosebumps. I've forgotten about that. That's right.
Just letting people bring their full stories.
That's it.
And coming in like that is
so you just reminded me, that was a beautiful, that also showed me the level of work that he was doing at a personal leadership level. And the soul, that's now another thing that I, through my journey, picked up, is the difference between the soul and the spirit. So I would, from my side, challenge the soul there and say he was probably looking for each person's spirit.
Yes.
Because the soul...
Well, the soul was the question he was on.
Yes, I'm saying...
I think he was looking for their purpose.
I think he was looking for the spirit. But yes, the word they used was the same intention behind it.
And maybe that's why the implementation is hard. It's not easy to stand up leading a huge business who the public narrative is it's being beaten by Amazon, and say the way we're going to attack Amazon is for us each to tell our life stories to each other and understand each other's purpose.
Can you imagine?
I mean, it takes tremendous bravery from him as a leader.
Massive.
And great confidence.
And also belief. So that's why I'm saying there must be a story behind the story, that he had such a significant shift. Because once you believe, no one can take you off that trajectory.
And I want to come back to the sorbet example that you used, because the moment we said dignity or confidence or something like that, immediately the implications were clear for all sorts of things other than marketing, right? Like, how should you treat people when they come in? What should your sitting area look like? What should your communication...
How do I train my people?
Like, how do you train your people, right? How does your pricing work? What is your opening price point? And I guess one of the criticisms that gets leveled against all this purpose thinking and the start with why, and that is that customers aren't paying that much attention, right? They're buying the product. They don't, Google's purpose may be to organize the world's information, but they just want to find the website that they're looking for. And one of the things that hit me reading this book was, it seems the strongest impact that a purpose orientation has is internally. Right? It actually drives internal action. So even if customers have no idea what your purpose is, the way it aligns and orientates your team and energizes your team could be enough benefit, even if customers never have any idea what your purpose is. Does that resonate with you and your journey?
I would totally support that. I think purpose is it drives your culture. Well, I've also linked it now to it's your strategy. It is your ultimate long-term 100-year, 200-year strategy. And then that's another problem we face, is everyone's short-term. We plan for the next quarter, not the next quarter century. It's everything short-term. Change leaders, come in with a new idea, business just wobbles. That's why there's so few businesses that we can actually link to one word, Woolworths being one. And now I've seen recently Roy Bagatini is moving on, and there's talk in the market around share price. I don't buy that. I think people are too short-term. They're too short-term. They've got a heart to that business, which is internally holding that business together. And it's the director of the business, and it was actually there at the founder's original intention statement in 1931. Why would you now go and stuff with that just because market conditions are maybe playing a part? Like, how can we trim the sails to be more closer to it rather than moving away from it? And then the last thing I'll say to that, yes, I totally resonate internal, but how much more powerful if your positioning of your brand can also link to that purpose, even at a marketing level, because then you're starting to touch the consumers. And Woolworths used to be to add quality or adding quality to life.
Yeah.
And then they changed it to the difference. And personally, if I was in charge, I would not have done that, because I think what a beautiful way to link the positioning of your brand to your purpose. No one is doing that in the world.
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity even for marketing.
Oh, well, we're both marketing people. And one of the things I was thinking about how purpose impacts a business is, I have a hypothesis that companies who understand their purpose well have less reverts on agency creative work.
I would
because
absolutely
they
support it, because
there's a brief, right, and they know what good looks like, and they can train their agency. When you don't know who you are, then you need lots of work, and if none of it's quite right, and you're searching in the dark for the work.
And so spot on, 100% aligned with you on that. And what people don't realize, there's a continuum that you can get out of a word. So if let's say my word is great, mine is greatness, but let's say the brand word is great. Now I can take that from a great price on the continuum of straight, hard-nosed, short-term sales drive, all the way to a great experience. Great emotional experience, great emotional impact at my product. Like I'm selling tents, and I tell a story of a dad that reestablished his friendship with his son because they go on a camping trip. So I can tell a great emotional connection there, but I can make great work right here as well. So, and it does give you that golden thread. I mean, there's so much nonsense out there, and at least every single touch point, people start feeling that. And then I think over time, people will start connecting to the brand better. So yeah, I think
it'll seep through in their experience of the brand. 100%. That's how it will go. Not because they necessarily understand the purpose,
they'll start feel it.
Purpose, but they'll feel it as they interact. If they go to Sorbet, they'll feel the dignity and the confidence
100%.
that comes from that. Look, I think we are almost out of time. So one way that people can really start to engage with it is read your excellent book, One Word. So there's a recommendation from me. Do you have any other advice for somebody who's listened to this, has always been a bit cynical about these purpose things, sounds a bit fluffy? Like, how do they get going? How do they start?
So I'll speak to both on a personal level, because I do think if you can start playing with, I'm so conscious not to call it a hypothesis, like my belief, but it's not necessarily the truth, it's just my truth, but it's quite a deep experience, very cellular experience that I've experienced. If you start playing on your own level as an individual, that's one starting point. And then I'll just quickly mention something on the business side, which is interesting, which I just thought about now. But your greatest limiting assumption about yourself, and we all carry limiting assumptions, all of us, every single person, no matter how confident they come across. We see this with actors, we see this with stand-up comedians, and then hearing that they were struggling with deep stuff, this depression. That's what drove them to become a stand-up comedian. We see this in the most confident people. We all have a level of trauma experience from childhood that drives the internal narrative that I call a limiting assumption. That is the key that unlocks the correct word. So that's a great starting point, is actually to start with a negative. And
so look at the trauma, understand the limiting assumption that comes from that trauma, and then try to work out what's the
furthest opposite. What's the furthest opposite? And then just when I was thinking it now, it's amazing how fast I'm thinking by 2,000 bits per second, 400 billion. But I was thinking in terms of business, Joe Public's purpose was born out of bankruptcy. So
corporate trauma.
Okay. The business purpose word is growth, which is the inverse of this, actually, now that I think about it. When we then unpacked it, because the word is just the embryo, that gives you the direction of what you stand for. You still have to give meaning to the word. Because if I say the color red, and I ask 10 people what comes up for them, I'm going to get 10 different answers. So I can't just say red is my purpose without defining absolutely clearly.
What does that actually mean?
What does that mean?
And treating the how.
Absolute, and the intention and the obsessive action. And you could be red and I could be red, but it's two different reds. So then we define what that growth meant, because everyone could go, you just want to make money. No, to serve the growth of our people, our clients, and our country through the greatness of creativity. And then obsession becomes the greatness of creativity, but behind it is not to make money, behind it is to serve the growth of that ecosystem. And then the bottom line goes to the bottom, and suddenly you go, oh, okay. When I try not to make money, I start making money.
That sounds like a noble purpose. I think that's a great place to sign off. Dr. Pepe Marias, thank you so much for being with us on the Nonfiction Book Club. The book we were covering was The Heart of Business by Hubert Holy. If you would like to hear more about Pepe's thinking, you should read all of his books, but especially One Word his most recent book, which gets into all of these topics much more. A reminder to sign up to our newsletter on www.nonfictionbookclub.co.za. Until next time, happy reading.